Stop and think before you act. Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a world that moves faster with every passing moment. We're constantly caught up in the rushing to meet deadlines, to get to the next place, to fix things that seem broken. We're always moving forward, but how often do we take a step back? When life feels like it's spinning too fast, we sometimes forget one simple thing: the importance of pausing. Before we speak, before we react, before we make decisions, we need to stop and think. Why? Because in that brief moment of stillness lies the power to transform our lives and the lives of those around us. We've all been there, acting out of anger, frustration, or fear. We've made choices that, in hindsight, we regret. But in those split seconds of emotional impulse, did we take the time to think about the consequences? Did we stop to ask ourselves, is this the best way forward? When we act without thinking, we give away our power. We let our emotions take control. But when we pause, we regain that power. We create space for clarity, for reflection, for understanding. And in that space, we often find that the solution we're looking for is not in rushing or reacting, but in responding thoughtfully. It's easy to get caught up in the noise around us, to act quickly because we're afraid of being left behind. But think for a moment, how many times has acting too quickly led to mistakes? How many times have you said something you didn't mean or made a decision you didn't truly want because you didn't take a moment to think? Now, I'm not saying we should be paralyzed by hesitation. What I am saying is that we must learn the art of pausing. It's in that pause where our inner wisdom can shine through. It's in that moment of silence where we can reconnect with our values, our truths, and what truly matters. Stop and think, not just for your own sake, but for the people around you. Think before you speak, because words can wound in ways we cannot undo. Think before you act, because decisions have a ripple effect that goes beyond what we see in the moment. I've learned through my own struggles that life doesn't always go according to plan. But it's in those unexpected turns, those moments of uncertainty, that the real strength lies. Not in what you do, but in how you respond. And responding thoughtfully with intention is what leads to real change. So, my friends, let's remember this. The pause is powerful. The moment of reflection, of breathing, of reconnecting with who we truly are can change everything. Before you act, take a breath, stop, think, and then move forward with clarity, compassion, and purpose. We live in a world that moves at an unimaginable pace. Every second of our day is filled with tasks, notifications, distractions, and demands. We rush through our lives, checking off to-do lists, responding to emails, texting friends, driving from one place to the next. In this constant whirlwind of activity, one thing is often missing: the moment to stop, to pause, to breathe. When something happens, whether it's an unexpected event or an emotional trigger, the natural instinct is to react. The world has trained us to move quickly, to fix things as they arise, to handle situations in real time. And while there are moments when action is required without delay, there are just as many when taking a step back and pausing is the most powerful response we can give. The art of pausing is often overlooked. We live in a culture that celebrates speed and urgency. The faster you respond, the quicker you fix the problem, the more successful you seem. But how often does this drive to act without hesitation lead to deeper issues? How often do we find ourselves saying something we regret, making a rash decision, or acting in a way that doesn't truly reflect who we are or what we value? In moments of stress, anger, frustration, or excitement, it can feel almost impossible to stop. Our emotions surge, clouding our judgment, pushing us toward immediate action. But it is precisely in those moments, when emotions are running high, that stopping is most important. It is in those moments that we need to pause and give ourselves the space to think. When we pause before reacting, we create an opportunity for clarity. A moment of reflection allows us to evaluate the situation from a more objective point of view. Instead of responding based on our initial emotional impulse, we can step back and analyze the problem more thoughtfully. This doesn't mean that we abandon our emotions altogether. Emotions are a crucial part of our decision-making process, but they shouldn't be the sole driving force behind our action. By pausing, we give ourselves permission to feel without being controlled by those feelings. We allow space for reason, empathy, and insight to emerge. Think about a time when you acted impulsively, when you spoke too quickly, made a hasty decision, or jumped into a situation without giving it the careful thought it deserved. Maybe you sent a text you wish you hadn't, or you made a decision that had lasting consequences. In those moments, if you had simply paused for just a few seconds to breathe, to think about the outcome, the situation might have turned out differently. This is the power of the pause. It gives us a chance to slow down, to separate ourselves from the emotional charge of the moment, and to choose a response that aligns with our deeper values. We often underestimate the power of taking a breath. A simple pause can be the difference between reacting out of anger or responding with calm and clarity. It allows us to check in with ourselves, to ask, what is my intention here? What do I truly want to accomplish? What will be the consequences of this action? These are not questions that can always be answered in the heat of the moment. But when we pause, we create the time and space for those questions to arise. And with those questions come the answers that guide us toward wiser, more thoughtful decisions. The truth is, when we act quickly without considering the consequences, we often end up regretting our actions. How many times have we hurt someone with our words or made a decision that we later realized wasn't the best choice? These moments of regret are not always the result of ill intentions, but often stem from acting too quickly without stopping to think first. If we could just slow down and give ourselves a moment of pause, many of these regrets could be avoided. Pausing also allows us to gain perspective. When we are in the middle of a difficult situation or facing a challenge, it can feel overwhelming. Our minds race with possibilities and we feel the pressure to act immediately. But when we pause, we allow ourselves to zoom out to see the bigger picture. In that moment of stillness, we can begin to recognize patterns, identify solutions, and approach the situation from a more grounded place. The pause gives us the opportunity to step back and reframe the situation, shifting from a place of panic or fear to a place of confidence and clarity. Moreover, when we pause, we show ourselves kindness. It's easy to be hard on ourselves, especially when we feel the weight of responsibility, deadlines, and expectations. But pausing is an act of self-compassion. It's a reminder that we don't have to have all the answers right away, and that it's okay to take our time. It's a gift we give ourselves, a moment to breathe, to recalibrate, to align our actions with our values rather than reacting out of pressure or urgency. We can learn so much from the practice of mindfulness, which encourages us to focus on the present moment without judgment. Mindfulness teaches us to notice our thoughts, our feelings, and our bodily sensations without immediately reacting to them. When we pause, we are practicing mindfulness. We become more aware of what's going on inside us and around us, and we respond with greater intention. This practice can transform our relationships, our work, and even the way we view ourselves. Instead of rushing through life, we become more present in it. Instead of reacting to the external world, we begin to respond from a place of inner peace and clarity. There's something profoundly powerful in taking a moment to simply be in a world that constantly urges us to do, to act, to achieve. Pausing reminds us that we are enough as we are. We don't need to prove anything in the next few seconds. We can trust ourselves to respond when the time is right. By pausing, we embrace the idea that we are worthy of time, worthy of space, and worthy of the opportunity to reflect before we act. One of the key reasons we often skip the pause is fear. We fear that if we don't act quickly, we'll miss out. We fear that if we don't make a decision right now, things will slip away from us. But the truth is, acting out of fear rarely leads to the best outcomes. When we make decisions out of fear, we tend to act impulsively without fully considering our options. We might grab onto the first solution that seems available without asking if it's truly the right one. Fear pushes us to rush, but the pause gives us the courage to step back, to trust that there's no rush, and that the best decision often comes when we give ourselves the time to think. Another barrier to pausing is the pressure of the external world. We are constantly bombarded with messages that tell us to keep moving, to hustle, to be productive every minute of the day. But if we don't take the time to pause, to reflect, we risk losing touch with our deeper selves. We risk becoming so caught up in the demands of the world that we forget who we are and what truly matters to us. Pausing isn't just about slowing down, it's about reconnecting with ourselves. It's about remembering that we are not machines but human beings, and that our well-being and our inner peace are just as important as our work and our accomplishments. So how do we cultivate the habit of pausing? It starts with recognizing that the pause is not a luxury, it's a necessity. It's a skill we can develop with practice, just like any other. The more we make space for stillness in our lives, the easier it becomes to access that space in moments of tension or conflict. We can start small by taking a few deep breaths before responding to an email or a difficult comment, by stepping away from a heated conversation and giving ourselves a moment to reflect. We can create routines that encourage pause, whether it's through meditation, journaling, or simply sitting in silence for a few minutes each day. Over time, this practice will become second nature. By learning to pause, we allow ourselves to act with purpose, with clarity, and with intention. We stop reacting out of habit and start responding from a place of wisdom. We stop giving in to the noise of the world and start listening to our own inner voice. The pause is not a weakness, it is a strength. It is the strength to slow down when the world is pushing you to go faster. It is the strength to take your time, to make decisions that align with your values, and to act from a place of deep understanding. In a world that encourages speed, the power lies in learning how to stop. The words we speak have an incredible amount of power. They can heal, they can hurt, they can inspire, and they can destroy. The impact of our words goes far beyond what we often realize in the moment. How often do we speak without fully thinking about the consequences? How often do we let emotions dictate what we say, allowing our words to spill out without considering their lasting effect? In those moments, the true power of our words can be easily lost, and the damage they cause may linger long after the conversation ends. This is why it's essential to pause and think before we speak. When we speak without careful consideration, we risk saying things we don't mean, or worse, saying things that harm others in ways we never intended. Words are not just a form of communication. They are the vehicle through which we express our beliefs, our emotions, and our intentions. In every conversation, our words create ripples. Once spoken, they can never be fully taken back, and their effects can reach much further than we ever imagined. Think about a time when someone said something to you that stuck with you long after the conversation ended. Perhaps it was a compliment that made you feel seen and appreciated, or perhaps it was an insult that left a mark on your self-esteem. Words have the power to shape how we see ourselves, how we see others, and how we interact with the world around us. And while words are just words, the meaning behind them is profound. What we say and how we say it can impact not only our relationships, but also the way we perceive and understand the world. When we speak without thinking, we are often motivated by the emotions of the moment: anger, frustration, excitement, or fear. In these heightened emotional states, we are more likely to say things that are hurtful or damaging. When we act impulsively, we give little thought to the effect our words might have on the other person. We might blurt out something in a heated argument that we don't mean, or share an opinion that is more about expressing our own feelings than engaging in meaningful dialogue. In these moments, we sacrifice empathy and connection for the sake of being heard or releasing our pent-up emotion. But what if, instead of speaking from a place of emotion, we took a step back and thought about the words we were about to say? What if we paused for just a moment before responding, considering how our words might affect the other person or how they might be received? This simple act of reflection can change the course of a conversation, a relationship, and even a life. When we pause before we speak, we allow ourselves the space to choose our words more carefully. We give ourselves the opportunity to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. One of the most powerful aspects of pausing before speaking is the opportunity it provides for empathy. Empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another person, and it plays a critical role in the way we communicate. When we pause and think before speaking, we give ourselves the chance to consider the other person's perspective. Instead of jumping to conclusions or assuming we know what they mean, we can take a moment to reflect on how they might be feeling. We can ask ourselves, what do they need from me right now? How can my words help them feel heard and understood? By taking the time to empathize before we speak, we ensure that our words are more likely to build connection rather than create division. We become more aware of the emotions and needs of others, and our words reflect that awareness. Empathy allows us to respond with kindness, respect, and consideration, qualities that are essential in any meaningful relationship. Whether it's a conversation with a friend, a family member, or a colleague, our words have the potential to strengthen our bonds and deepen our connections when we take the time to understand where the other person is coming from. Moreover, pausing before speaking doesn't just benefit our relationships with others, it also benefits our relationship with ourselves. How often do we say things in the heat of the moment that we later regret? How often do we wish we could take back something we said in frustration or anger? The emotional toll of speaking impulsively can be heavy, leaving us with feelings of guilt, shame, or regret. By taking a moment to pause before speaking, we can avoid these negative emotions altogether. We give ourselves the chance to choose our words more consciously, ensuring that we say what we truly mean and avoid saying things that we'll later wish we hadn't. Taking a pause before speaking also gives us the chance to reflect on our values. What is it that we want to communicate? What kind of message do we want to send? In the rush of daily life, it can be easy to forget that our words have power. We may get caught up in the moment, reacting to a situation without considering how our words align with our core beliefs and values. When we pause and reflect before speaking, we give ourselves the chance to align our words with our highest intention. We ensure that what we say is a true reflection of who we are and what we stand for. In addition to helping us communicate more effectively, pausing before we speak also makes us more mindful of the power of silence. Silence is often undervalued in a world that encourages constant conversation and noise. But there is incredible power in pausing, in choosing not to speak, in allowing space for contemplation and reflection. Sometimes the best response isn't a response at all. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is listen, to let the other person speak and allow them the space to be heard. In these moments, silence speaks volumes. It shows respect, understanding, and empathy. And often it creates the conditions for a more thoughtful and productive conversation. As we practice the art of pausing before speaking, we become more conscious of the way our words shape the world around us. We learn to speak with intention, using our words to build connection, to foster understanding, and to create positive change. Whether we are speaking to a friend, a colleague, or even a stranger, our words have the ability to make a difference. By taking the time to pause and think before we speak, we unlock the true potential of our words words to heal, inspire, and uplift, rather than hurt, divide, or destroy. The pause is not just about slowing down. It's about being more intentional with our communication, being more mindful of the impact our words have, and choosing to use that power for good. The moment we realize that our actions not only affect ourselves, but also the world around us, we begin to approach life differently. It's easy to get caught up in the rush of everyday living, to go through the motions and make decisions without fully considering their broader implications. But the truth is, everything we do has an impact. From the smallest gesture to the largest decision, our actions ripple out into the world in ways we often can't see in the immediate moment. Understanding this gives us a sense of responsibility. Responsibility not just for ourselves, but for the way our choices influence the people around us, our communities, and even the larger world. Too often, we make decisions impulsively, driven by a need for immediate gratification or a desire to avoid discomfort. We respond to challenges with haste, reacting instead of thinking, acting instead of reflecting. This approach can be tempting, especially in moments of stress or anxiety, when everything seems urgent and high stakes. However, when we act without considering the impact of our actions, we risk making choices that don't align with our values or our long-term goals. The consequences of these quick decisions may not be immediately visible, but they can accumulate over time, leading us down paths we never intended to take. When we take a moment to pause and think before we act, we give ourselves the space to consider the bigger picture. We stop for a moment and ask ourselves, how will this action affect me in the long run? How will it affect others? What kind of impact do I want to have on the world around me? These are the types of questions that allow us to make decisions from a place of intention rather than impulse. By pausing and reflecting, we can align our actions with our deeper values and goals, ensuring that we are not just reacting to the immediate pressures of the moment, but are acting in a way that supports our long-term growth and well-being. In the fast-paced world we live in, it can feel like there's no time to stop and think. Every moment seems to demand immediate attention, and we often feel compelled to act quickly in order to keep up with the demands of our lives. But in the rush to move forward, we lose sight of the fact that slowing down can actually help us move more effectively. When we take the time to think before we act, we give ourselves the opportunity to make more informed decisions, to weigh the pros and cons, and to consider all available options. Instead of rushing toward the first solution that comes to mind, we can make a decision that is thoughtful and deliberate, one that is more likely to lead to positive outcomes. The beauty of this approach is that it empowers us to take control of our own lives. When we stop and think before we act, we're not allowing external circumstances or the emotions of the moment to dictate our behavior. We reclaim the power to choose how we respond, to act in ways that align with who we want to be and the kind of life we want to create. Instead of reacting automatically, we are acting with awareness and purpose. This mindful approach to decision-making also allows us to be more considerate of others. Our actions don't just affect us, they affect the people around us, sometimes in ways we may not even be aware of. The choices we make can create ripple effects that touch the lives of our families, friends, colleagues, and even strangers. When we act thoughtlessly or without considering how others will be impacted, we risk causing harm, creating misunderstandings, or damaging relationships. But when we pause and reflect before acting, we can consider the effects our choices will have on others. This enables us to act with more empathy and kindness, strengthening our connections and creating a more positive environment for everyone involved. Taking time to think before acting also means being mindful of the long-term effects of our decisions. Many of the most important choices we make in life are not immediate or short-term. Whether it's a career decision, a relationship choice, or a financial commitment, the consequences of our actions can unfold over years, even decades. Acting impulsively might provide short-term relief or satisfaction, but it could have long-lasting repercussions. By pausing and considering the long-term implications of our actions, we make decisions that support our future happiness, well-being, and success. We choose paths that align with our goals and values rather than rushing into decisions that are driven by short-term emotions or external pressures. In addition to improving our own decision-making, this approach also helps us grow as individuals. Every time we pause and reflect before we act, we cultivate a deeper sense of self-awareness. We become more in tune with our own values, desires, and motivations, which helps us make decisions that are more authentic and aligned with who we truly are. This process of self-reflection allows us to learn from our past experiences, to recognize patterns in our behavior, and to make better choices moving forward. It is through this kind of thoughtful reflection that we become more conscious of our actions, and as a result, we grow into better versions of ourselves. Of course, this doesn't mean we should never act quickly or make decisions in the heat of the moment. Sometimes there are situations that require immediate action, where thinking things through would cause unnecessary delays. But in those instances, the ability to act thoughtfully and decisively comes from having practiced the skill of reflection and mindfulness. When we've cultivated the habit of pausing and thinking before acting in everyday situations, we are more likely to respond thoughtfully and effectively when the stakes are higher or when we need to make a quick decision. When we talk about responding thoughtfully, we often overlook just how much control we actually have over our actions and decisions. Life throws a constant stream of challenges at us, and in many cases, we feel the pressure to act quickly or to react immediately to the situations we face. It's only natural to feel this urgency, especially when emotions run high or the stakes seem incredibly important. But if we respond from a place of deep thought rather than a place of emotional impulse, we reclaim the power to shape our experiences and outcomes in a way that aligns with our true values. We've all experienced moments where we've reacted hastily, said something we didn't mean, made a decision we later regretted, or acted out of frustration or fear. In those moments, our emotions take the lead and we forget the power of pause. We let our immediate feelings dictate our actions. But what happens when we respond from a place of thoughtfulness and intention instead? When we take the time to step back, gather our thoughts, and then respond, we bring clarity into our decisions. We make choices that are grounded in wisdom, not in the emotional chaos of the moment. The idea of responding thoughtfully means that we don't let our emotions hijack our decision-making process. It's not about suppressing our feelings or pretending they don't exist. In fact, our emotions can be valuable signals, providing important insights into what's going on inside us and how we might feel about a particular situation. However, the key is not to let these emotions control us. No, the key is to let these emotions control us. When we respond thoughtfully, we don't allow ourselves to be swept away by anger, frustration, or fear. Instead, we acknowledge those feelings, take a deep breath, and choose how we will respond from a more grounded and clear-minded place. Think about how often we act without thinking because we're influenced by the intensity of our emotions. In these moments, we forget that we can control how we react. We have the power to step back and create space between our feelings and our actions. This space allows us to pause and reflect on what we truly want to achieve. It gives us the opportunity to respond with intention, to make a choice that reflects who we are at our core. By responding thoughtfully, we avoid making rash decisions that we might later regret, and we empower ourselves to make choices that align with our deeper values and goals. It's easy to get caught up in the pressure of a situation. When we feel rushed or overwhelmed, the tendency is often to act quickly in the hopes of solving the problem or escaping the discomfort we're feeling. But this immediate action often comes with unintended consequences. Maybe we lash out at someone in a moment of frustration, only to realize later that our words hurt them. Or perhaps we make a decision without considering all the options, which later turns out to be a poor choice. Acting impulsively can create problems that could have been avoided with a little more time and thought. On the other hand, when we respond thoughtfully, we act with purpose. We recognize that our decisions have consequences, and we give ourselves the space to make decisions that align with our long-term well-being and values, rather than responding in the heat of the moment. A thoughtful response allows us to be more in control of our actions, and that control gives us power. We are no longer subject to the whims of our emotions. Instead, we choose how we want to act based on what is best for us and the people around us. This kind of response also requires us to embrace empathy. When we respond thoughtfully, we take the time to consider the perspectives of others. Instead of rushing to defend ourselves or react defensively, we take a step back and try to understand where the other person is coming from. We consider their feelings, their motivations, and their needs. In doing so, we don't just act in a way that benefits us, but also in a way that is respectful and compassionate toward others. Thoughtful responses are built on understanding, and when we respond with empathy, we create stronger, more connected relationships. At the heart of responding thoughtfully is the idea of making conscious choices. When we rush, we often act out of habit, reacting to situations the same way we've always reacted. But when we respond thoughtfully, we break free from automatic responses and choose a new path. This is where true growth happens. We begin to cultivate a deeper sense of self-awareness and emotional intelligence. We learn to recognize when we're being triggered by emotions, and we develop the ability to pause and reflect before we respond. This is a powerful skill, one that can lead to greater personal growth, improved relationships, and a sense of inner peace. The key to responding thoughtfully is practice. It's something that we must actively work on, especially when life is pushing us to act quickly. It can be challenging to slow down in a world that values instant gratification and quick results. But when we make responding thoughtfully a habit, we start to notice the difference it makes in our lives. We become more mindful of our actions and their impact, and we begin to take greater responsibility for the way we engage with the world around us. We also need to recognize that not every situation requires an immediate response. Sometimes the best response is to wait. We don't always have to solve everything right away. There's power in stepping back, allowing ourselves time to process, and then moving forward when we're ready. Waiting doesn't mean we're avoiding the issue. It means we're giving ourselves the space to come up with a more thoughtful and effective solution. Responding thoughtfully is about making choices that serve us in the long run, not simply reacting to the immediate pressures or emotions of the moment. The world may push us to act quickly, to respond immediately, but when we choose to respond thoughtfully, we put ourselves in the driver's seat of our own lives. We stop being swept along by the current of emotions and begin to navigate with intention and purpose. By taking the time to pause, reflect, and then respond, we take back control over how we react to the world. And in doing so, we not only protect ourselves from hasty decisions, but also create a more compassionate, mindful, and empowering way of engaging with life. Our decisions shape our reality, and every choice we make has a ripple effect that extends far beyond the immediate moment. Every word we speak, every action we take has consequences, some obvious, others not so apparent. It's easy to overlook the long-term impact of our decisions when we're caught in the heat of the moment, when emotions are high and we feel pressure to act quickly. But when we take a moment to stop and reflect, we gain the clarity needed to make choices that lead to better outcomes, both for ourselves and the people around us. Consequences are not always immediately visible, but they always exist. The consequences of our actions can unfold over time, often in ways that we never expect. Think about the smallest decisions you've made throughout your day, whether it's a conversation you had, a small gesture you made, or a decision you rushed through. At the time, they may have seemed insignificant, but over time, they can accumulate and influence the course of your life in profound ways. The way we respond to situations can impact our relationships, our careers, our well-being, and even the world around us. When we act without considering the consequences, we risk making decisions that could have negative long-term effects. For example, responding in anger to a comment might provide temporary relief, but it can create lasting tension in a relationship. Rushing into a decision without fully thinking through the potential outcomes can lead to regret later on. Even the smallest of actions, like not listening carefully or dismissing someone's perspective, can have a ripple effect that causes harm we didn't anticipate. This is why it's so important to take a step back before we act, to pause and consider the consequences of our decisions. The power of reflection lies in its ability to provide us with a broader perspective. When we are caught up in the immediacy of a situation, we often fail to see beyond the surface. We might focus only on the short-term solution or the immediate gratification that comes with making a quick decision. However, when we take the time to think about the potential consequences, we open ourselves up to a wider view. We begin to see how our actions fit into a larger context, how they might affect not only ourselves, but also those around us, and even the broader community. By considering the consequences, we also give ourselves the chance to align our decisions with our values. Each decision we make is an opportunity to act in accordance with what we truly believe in. When we take the time to reflect, we ask ourselves important questions. Does this action align with my principles? Will this decision support my long-term goals? Will it help me grow as a person or hinder my progress? These reflections help us make more thoughtful, intentional decisions that not only serve us in the present, but also shape our future in positive ways. It's easy to forget that our choices, big or small, are interconnected. The decisions we make today can influence the opportunities that come our way tomorrow. When we act thoughtfully, we create a chain of positive consequences that can lead to greater success, fulfillment, and happiness. On the other hand, when we rush into decisions without thinking, we can unknowingly create obstacles for ourselves down the road. The consequences of our actions might not always be immediately visible, but they accumulate over time, often in ways that we can't predict. This is why it's so important to pause and consider the broader impact of our choices. In addition to the impact on our own lives, our decisions also affect the lives of others. Every interaction we have, every decision we make can influence the people around us. When we act without thinking, we may inadvertently hurt someone's feelings, create unnecessary conflict, or cause harm to someone we care about. By taking a moment to reflect on the potential consequences of our actions, we can avoid causing harm to others and make choices that nurture and strengthen our relationship. Even in difficult situations, we can respond with empathy and compassion. When we take the time to consider how our words and actions might affect the other person. When we consider the consequences of our actions, we also begin to understand that our decisions are part of a larger cycle. The way we treat others, the way we show up in the world, influences the way we are treated in return. Thoughtful decisions foster positive relationships and contribute to a more harmonious environment. On the other hand, thoughtless decisions can create division, misunderstanding, and conflict. By pausing to reflect on the potential outcomes of our actions, we contribute to creating a more understanding and compassionate world. The idea of considering consequences also involves taking responsibility for the outcomes of our choices. When we act without thinking, we often find ourselves blaming external circumstances or other people for the results of our decisions. But the truth is, we are responsible for the choices we make, and understanding the consequences of those choices helps us take ownership of our action. When we take responsibility for our decisions, we empower ourselves to make better choices moving forward. We learn from our mistakes and grow stronger as a result. One of the most important aspects of considering consequences is recognizing that our decisions don't just affect the present moment. They shape the future. Every decision we make contributes to the direction our lives will take. The more we take the time to reflect on the potential outcomes of our actions, the more we can guide ourselves toward a future that aligns with our goals and values. The ability to think ahead and consider the long-term effects of our decisions is a powerful tool for personal growth and success. This doesn't mean that we need to overanalyze every decision or become paralyzed by fear of making the wrong choice.
Lasciati scegli mele tu, un sole che scuria trairà. Mi dissi vieni con me stasera, una sera che pari a magia, una cantina che durava musto, lo cuore mio, gli incidetti tutto. Gira chiagnina lenta e sorda, e giro frasso che canta ancora, che non è vino rosso come fuoco, ambivio frasso, scordavo loco, manichini, dove speranza, da sta terra tutto danza. Prega Maria che faccio milico, mi persi su dai panni rossi, c'era una croce fatta d'olivi, mi dai sopra senza scusa. Prega Maria, non sa ciucciù, se era morio era tabù. Ammuzzo tutto frasso, scioglieva cori come passo. Tu c'era notte in vento, con una luna appesa senza pentimento. Una voce mi chiamava tu funno, scendi ancora un perdi sto mondo. Da cantina il tempo si ferma, ogni goccia è storia eterna. Cutti a me lato, cutti a me cori, sti stiddi cacciato non mori. Scuro fora, ma luci dintra, a voci do, sempre mi senta. Prega Maria che faccio milico, mi persi su dai panni rossi, c'era una croce fatta d'olivi, mi dai sopra senza scusa. Prega Maria, un saccio giù, se era morio era tabù. Lasciati mi scegli mele tu, ogni volta, ogni giornata, a ti attorno in ta cantina, con vino speranza e una picca rovina.